Chapter 6. Athlon arrives at his cousin's house. Athlon's cousin's name was Skip Wobit. Many people thought Skip was a nickname, but it was not. He even had a younger brother named Chip. Athlon wasn't close to Chip, being 5 years older. Skip, however, had been his best friend during high school. He was a year younger than Athlon. He lived in Washerman. Athlon had not been to see Skip since he had moved there. Athlon was surprised to see what a large town Washerman was. He found his cousin's house to be in a nice, recently built neighborhood on the west side of town. As he pulled into the driveway, he noted happily that the house seemed to be everything that his cousin had ever wanted. It was large, traditional in design, and yet a modern structure with modern features. The yard was small and well maintained. Several large trees remained from the forest that had once stood where the neighborhood now was. Athlon smiled. How cozy and inviting it all seemed. He parked where his car would be out of the way if anyone wanted to come or go from the garage. Before stepping out, he looked around for a dog. His cousin would be just the type to have a large, stupid dog. He saw nothing. Maybe it was a cat, or a couple of cats. Skip came out of the front door as Athlon started across the driveway. "I was wondering when you'd get here." Skip's voice was the same as it had been when they were young, although he had a change in appearance. He had once looked much like a Ken doll, blond and blandly handsome, but with an elfin nose. Now he was thinning severely on top and thickening about the middle. "I hope you haven't lost any work waiting on me." Athlon wondered whether he should hug his cousin. He decided on a handshake. They hadn't seen each other in 20 years. "No, I've got nothing on for today." Skip invited Athlon into the house. "Karen's not here?" Athlon asked as they stepped into the entranceway. No, she's at work." Skip pointed at a framed picture of his wife on the wall by way of a substitute for her presence. As Athlon had foreseen, there were 2 cats roaming about, although their presence did nothing to alter the neutral, new house smell that the house had. He had also foreseen this smell. Strange how these modern houses all maintain their new smell for years and years. "Come on into my man cave," Skip invited. Athlon winced. He hated trendy terminology. What was wrong with den, or office, or workroom, or studio? The room which Skip led Athlon into was dark. The only window had been covered over first with aluminum foil, then with black fabric, and finally filled in with shelves containing not books, for Skip had never been a reader, but pecans set upright on little stands. Each pecan had a face carved into it. "That's one of my hobbies," Skip explained as Athlon approached the repurposed window. The faces on the pecans weren't that interesting, Athlon silently observed. "Fascinating," is what he said. "When did you start doing this?" "Oh, a few years ago." Skip inspected his collection. He was an artist. "I pick up a pecan once in a while if I happen to drive by a grove." "Your business takes you around the state a good bit, I guess," Athlon suggested. His mind was occupied over the question of whether pecan trees lived in groves or orchards. But I haven't done a carving in some time. This is the last one I did." Skip pointed to a pecan that looked a little like Homer Simpson. Athlon gives his cousin his present. "Well, I have something for you," Athlon told Skip before excusing himself to return to his car. "I've missed several of your birthdays." "Oh, that's all right," Skip interrupted. "And so this is kind of a collective birthday present, many years' worth." He handed Skip the large box. "Well, I can't wait to see what it is." Skip carefully removed the paper. "Have to save the wrapping," he joked. There was a time when people made the pretense of saving wrapping paper for later reuse. Even in Athlon's childhood, this was never actually done, but parents always admonished children not to make a mess of the wrapping paper when opening their gifts. Skip opened the box within. He laughed. "Do you think I've got a problem?" he asked. The box was full of rolls of toilet paper. Athlon's mouth fell open. "That is not what I put in that box," he insisted. Skip looked at him, puzzled. "Hold on a second," Athlon begged. He ran back out to his car and returned with the puppet. "This is what was supposed to be in there," he lied brazenly, happily. "His name is Phil." As soon as he saw the toilet paper, he suspected that Whiskers had stolen the present. Why the lion man had done it, he had no idea. It was unlikely that either Biff or Trotter had taken it, as they had not been alone with the present after Athlon had finished wrapping it. Athlon masked his own substitution well. Skip had no idea that the puppet was not the original gift. Athlon felt bad giving it up, but had introduced it with its new name as a concession, a farewell, an apology. "Thank you very much." Skip smiled delightedly, putting the puppet on his hand. "That's really cool. I can't think how it got put in the wrong box." There was no other box. And that toilet paper, which you can keep, by the way, got in there. Maybe someone who works for me did it. I don't know. Well, thank you for the puppet and the toilet paper. Skip took the puppet off. I'll make a special place for it in here. The rest of the room that Skip referred to as his man cave was mostly entertainment related. There was a large television, a rack of DVDs, and a rack of CDs. The pictures on the walls were framed sports memorabilia. An overly padded, overly shiny sofa was against the wall opposite the TV. It was large enough for a man to sleep on, should he have to. I like your special room, Athlon exaggerated. It's nice to have a place that's all your own. I guess your whole house is like that. Skip raised his eyebrows. Well, not exactly. Athlon thought of his assistant's quarters. But yeah, mostly. Skip looked thoughtful. I guess it's time you saw it for yourself. The words came out of Athlon's mouth like the barks of a man hypnotized by a stage magician into thinking he is a dog. The cousin asked about Athlon's latest book. So, you writing anything lately? Skip asked as the two men each took a seat on the back porch. Always, Athlon instructed. You've always got to be in the middle of a project. So, what's it about? Athlon took a deep breath. He glanced into the backyard where one day, if life developed according to the standard American model, a pool would be one day installed. It's called Bees Bombard the Nightclub with Reflective Sputum. That's just a working title, he added, seeing Skip's eyes widen. Although I do like it. The book is about the discovery of life on another planet. Intelligent life. This destroys the basis of Christianity, but instead of admitting defeat, the Christians begin to develop a space program to visit this other planet and share the gospel with its inhabitants. Cool, Skip responded. Are there any actual bees in the book? No, Athlon smiled. A nightclub? No. Athlon shook his head. However, there are a lot of subplots and tangents. I suppose at some point somebody might go into a nightclub. I have one character named Bathless, who investigates religious leaders on behalf of NASA. I could have him meet an informant at a place called the Bulkless Pretender, an old-fashioned nightclub with sophisticated entertainment. As he enters, he wonders whatever became of such establishments. Would he be able to order a steak? Was it that kind of a place? Earlier, a colleague at the Investigation Task Force headquarters questioned Bathless about his eating habits. You don't actually eat steak, do you? Bathless, large and imposing like a soda pop vending machine in a tailor-made brown suit, sat down on the bumper of his flying vehicle and examined his left thumbnail. It was ragged. He needed to find some grout against which to file it down. I prefer other meat, he replied in his deep, terrifying, oaken voice. One of the women in the special NASA squad commented that she didn't find Bathless's voice terrifying at all. I find it sexy, she whispered. I think you find it sexy because it's terrifying. Alan, recently transferred from Buckles Close, countered. For a newcomer, you sure make yourself free with your opinions. The woman's eyes narrowed. I just get tired of women telling me how sexy they find some brutal thug. Oh, there's a distinct possibility that man might kill me. Athlon adopted a feminine tone. That gets me so wet. The woman pointed a newly sharpened pencil at Athlon. You don't talk to me anymore, understand? Bathless, born in a secret location far away, was the creation of ancient elemental forces harnessed by penumbrous scientists working at a great Bathless, born in a secret location far away, was the creation of ancient elemental forces harnessed by penumbrous scientists working at great taxpayer-funded expense. His later career as a folk hero among the New Canadians was not to begin for nearly a year, yet he was already the darling of the men upstairs. We need to send him into space, they agreed. Skip heard all of this, but took very little of it in. He had only asked about the book to appear polite. The cousin tells Athlon about his misfortunes. So, how are things with you? Athlon asked his cousin. Skip's head bobbed up and down as he considered. Karen and I are getting a divorce, he said at last. Oh no, looks like it. But nothing definite? No, it's pretty definite. She's told me that's what she wants. Skip smiled. He was ready to make light of it. That is really too bad. Is that why she's not here? No, Shirley had to work, but I don't know when she'll be home. She's been spending a lot of time at her brother's place. God knows why, he added sourly. Athlon kept his mouth shut. He wanted to ask what had happened, but decided it would be better not to pry. And it looks like I'm going to lose my business, Skip continued resignedly. My God, swore Athlon. Skip ran his hand over his eyes, squeezed the bridge of his nose. I made the mistake of hiring somebody without a valid driver's license. He wrecked my work truck and the insurance wouldn't pay. When was this? About a year ago. That was the first in a long chain of events. Skip rolled his hands over each other. That led to the divorce. We've basically been living off Karen's salary for months now. Jesus, Skip, I can give you some work, Athlon offered abruptly. He was sure something in his house could have some tile added to it. No, that's okay. Skip shook his head. I'm thinking of taking a job as a custodian, maintenance man at the local high school, if I can get it. You don't think a month's worth of work at my house could make a difference? I'm just waiting on the bank to serve the papers. Skip sat in silence for a moment. I should have become a drummer like I wanted to when I was a teenager, he told Athlon. Athlon said nothing. They had used to talk about starting a band long ago. I'm just glad we never had any kids. Yeah, Athlon agreed solemnly. Me too. Chip's kids are almost grown, Skip informed Athlon. Yeah, I guess so. Athlon thought about it. He had never seen Chip's children. Did he feel guilty about this? No, he didn't. He wondered if he should feel guilty about not feeling guilty. So what are you going to do? Asked Skip. Are you keeping the house? No, I can't afford it. I don't know if Karen will be able to afford it alone. Then why did you say you'd make a special place for Phil the puppet in your man cave? Athlon demanded mentally. If only there was some way he could take the puppet back. He was relieved that Skip had turned down his offer of work. Once he was out of here, he was through with his family forever. He would never see Skip again. Thank goodness Skip never did have children. Athlon might have feelings of obligation toward them. It was bad enough that he had never helped out his own sister's children. That was easy, however, as the sister's religious beliefs were so offensive that he could not allow himself to give her money that would be spent according to such beliefs. The cousin takes Athlon on a walk around the yard. As the backyard was entirely enclosed by a painted wooden fence taller than a man, it was immediately apparent to Athlon that it constituted a world unto itself. As he and Skip wandered about, away from the safety of the porch, the yard became a place where only a few feet might separate the specific regions, areas where distinctly different types of things were done, by distinctly different methods. The trees in other people's yards became indistinct, the surrounding sky nothing more than a wash of blue occasioned with smears of white. All was artifice outside the yard, even as the yard became a disconnected bubble of moment. Athlon looked at the artifice of the house itself. It was a stage set, a backdrop. You want to smoke some pot? Skip asked suddenly. Skip, I'm surprised. Athlon turned to his cousin delightedly. I didn't think you liked pot. I've come to appreciate it over the years, Skip replied, but it still makes me sleepy. It does that to some people, but yeah, I'll smoke with you. I was denied a beer at lunch. Skip pulled a small metal box with a hinged lid from his pants pocket. This contained a couple of joints and a lighter. He and Athlon stepped into the little vine-covered gazebo and sat down. You go first. Skip handed Athlon a joint and the lighter. God, I haven't had pot in so long. He lit the joint and inhaled deeply. He handed the joint back to Skip. Really? Skip responded once he had released his own first toke. I would have thought you'd be smoking all the time, doing whatever you want. Athlon exhaled his second dose. My life is the same as anybody else's. I've got my problems, just like you, he said. They passed the joint back and forth until it was so small that the only thing to be done with it was to crush it out and drop it back into the box. Is that an old Band-Aid box? Athlon asked. Yeah. Remember when they used to come in metal boxes? You'll never see those at the store again. You want to burn the other one? Skip shook the box. Hell no, I'm bombed as it is. I don't see how jazz musicians do it. Athlon looked at Skip in wonder. You listen to jazz? Skip shrugged his shoulders. I've started to. Well, you amaze me. I never would have thought you'd listen to jazz. I listen to the jazz station on the radio. I find it very relaxing. Just like you found marijuana soporific, Athlon thought. You listen to jazz. I listen to jazz. You listen to jazz. I listen to jazz. You like Joe Henderson? I listen to jazz. You like Grover Washington Jr.? A neighbor watches from over the fence. Nero Shalter, standing on a bucket, was able to peer into Skip's backyard. He saw the telltale smoke issuing from the gazebo. He waited until Athlon and Skip stepped out before dropping below the top of the fence. What are you looking at? Shalter's wife Helene demanded. He's at it again, Nero said softly, descending from his bucket. What? His wife, some yards away, was packing straw around the bases of several plants. He's at it again, Nero hissed, miming the act of smoking something. Helene glanced at the tall fence. You saw him? Well, you've got to call the police. Make them do something this time. I'm going to. Nero Shalter headed towards the house. Marijuana was illegal for a reason. That stuff was nothing but poison. McLeod County Sheriff's Department, the bored voice on the phone answered. How can I help you? This is Nero Shalter at 884 Pea Gravel Road. My neighbor is smoking marijuana. Again! You witnessed your neighbor smoking pot, sir? Yes, I did. I was looking over the fence into his yard and I saw him and another man smoking marijuana. Well, sir, how do you know it's marijuana? Did you smell it? No, I didn't, and even if I had, I wouldn't know what it smells like. I've never smoked it, he concluded proudly. Okay, sir, which neighbor is it? His name is Skip Wobit. He lives at 882 Pea Gravel Road. I don't know who the other man is. Maybe his dealer. All right, sir, we'll send an officer around to check it out. Thank you. Well, Helene asked as Nero rejoined her outside. They're sending a deputy. Nero approached his bucket warily. Good. I can't wait to see him hauled away. Nero stepped onto the bucket again and cautiously raised himself onto his tiptoes. With his eyes just over the top of the fence, he scanned Skip's backyard for more evidence of iniquity. He could see no one. Soon, he thought, soon, he's going to jail, and they'll confiscate all his property. Nero could feel an erection growing in his pants. Come down from there, Helene called. Reluctantly, but not without hope of compensation, Nero quitted his post. He put his hand in his pocket and squeezed his organ over and over as he approached his wife. We can probably see better from the front yard, Helene advised as she got to her feet. Hey, Nero grunted, standing immediately in front of her. Feel this. He put her hand, still inside a gardening glove, on his crotch. Helene smiled. What are you so excited about? You like to see a woman on her knees? Let's go inside, Nero urged. I'll have to take a shower first, the woman warned. He made a petulant noise of protest at this, but she countered with, Nero, I'm filthy. Athlon and his cousin reminisced. Do you remember the time I was drinking out of a 2-liter bottle of soda and you started singing this song from the Mr. T. Doll commercial? Athlon asked as the two men resumed their seats on the back porch. No, Skip smiled, looking into his cousin's laughing eyes and trying to remember. I burst out laughing and spewed soda all over inside of the car. We were in your car? Yeah. Do you remember when we were at the mall and we were parked outside Penny's and the other car was parked beside us with the window down? I started drooling all over the front seat through the window, and the people who owned the car walked up. Athlon smiled. Yeah, I remember that. That was in my '78 Toyota. That was the car my cousin Gary later killed himself in. Really? Skip didn't know what the cousin he was talking about, but didn't ask for further information. We had a lot of good times in that car, Athlon smiled, even if it was a piece of shit. Do you remember that Scirocco I had? I remember getting stoned in it with you when listening to Hank Williams Jr. I don't remember that, Skip confessed, but that car is now at the bottom of Lake Selmer. He pointed in what was presumably the direction of the lake in question. Really? Yeah, the man I sold it to drove it off a bridge about a year later and nearly drowned. They never recovered the car. Athlon considered this for a moment. Did you ever get to ride in my van, he asked. I think so. I know I sat in it. Whatever happened to it? I wound up trading it to somebody for a video camera. That's the camera I used to film the erroneous seeds more comfortable in the mucus. Is that the one you won the prize for? Skip took a chance and guessed. That's right. That led to my whole career. Lucky trade, Skip declared. Indeed, Athlon thought. They sat silently for a minute or two. Do you remember that girl I was dating back then? Athlon asked. Susan? Oh, sure. Athlon longed to ask whether Skip had ever slept with her, but held back. He took off his glasses and polished them with the hem of his shirt. She was something, he finally decided. Whatever happened to her? I don't know. Athlon shook his head. He put his glasses back on. Her brother's a lawyer with Greenpeace or something now. Do you remember Grandpa's funeral? I remember sweating in the hot sun in that suit, Athlon recalled. It was the first time that he and Skip had spoken in nearly 2 years due to a drunken argument over a shirt. I remember the preacher's wife telling me that he was in a better place now. I wanted to scream at her. What, a hole in the ground? He turned to Skip. Do you remember how Joe was weeping uncontrollably? I hate to say this, but I found it a little embarrassing. Do you remember molesting me? The cousin's wife shows up. The sound of a car pulling into the front brought both men to their feet. Karen must be home, Skip told Athlon. Apprehension was revealed in his eyes. Will she be angry at our smoking pot? Athlon asked. Maybe, but she definitely won't like my smoking pot. But hey, Skip laughed. She's the one that wants a divorce. Why should she care? They heard movement in the house. Skip decided to meet the issue head on. They re-entered the house and found Karen hunting for them. There you are. Karen was cheerful. She greeted Athlon warmly, but there was no physical contact. Athlon could readily see the stamp of achievement in Karen's mien. She had developed over the years into an accomplished, mature person. Been smoking, I see, she addressed Skip. Something of the pirate, sensing easy pickings glittered in her eye. Have we? Athlon turned to Skip and smiled. Let me show you what Athlon brought me. Skip offered a diversion and slipped out of the kitchen. How have you been? Karen asked Athlon just as he was about to do the same. I've been very well, Athlon told her sincerely. I saw that one of your books is going to be made into a movie. Athlon frowned. Which one is that? He asked. Oh, I don't know, Karen replied. I just know I read it in a magazine about a month ago, maybe. Athlon thought for a moment. They must have been referring to Black Mustache Insert Buffet. That was it. Karen used her index finger to emphasize the fact. Yeah, Athlon nodded, but that wasn't a book. That was based on an original screenplay. Oh. Skip returned with the puppet. See, he showed his wife. Very nice, Karen commented. Where'd you get that? She asked Athlon. I got that in Bavaria, Athlon sang. An old man makes them by hand in the basement of a 1,000-year-old brewery. Skip made the puppet bite playfully. Skip made the puppet bite playfully at Karen's hair. Karen smiled, but put up a hand to fend off any further intimacy. Has Skip given you the grand tour? She turned to Athlon as Skip laid the puppet down on the counter. Yes, it's a very nice home. Thank you, Karen nodded. Skip, I'm going to get changed. She left the kitchen. Well, Athlon whispered to Skip after she had gone. That was awkward. If you weren't here, she'd have raised hell about the pot. Why? Wondered Athlon. She's an educated woman. Surely she knows it's relatively harmless, despite the risk of a prosecution. I don't think it's the pot so much as my enthusiasm for it that she objects to. It's the fact that I like it so much that she can't stand. Athlon shook his head. I don't understand that at all, he muttered. It'd be the same if I played golf, Phil added in a voice similar to the one he had used when manipulated by Athlon. Storm clouds gather. The doorbell rang. Karen had just finished changing. She called it from the foot of the staircase. I'll get it, and answered the door. A plump deputy with a crew cut stood there. Yes, she asked. Ma'am, sorry to bother you, but we've received a call from some neighbor of yours that marijuana use has been witnessed on these premises. Really? Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Look at my eyes. Do I seem stoned to you? Do you smell any pot smoke? Actually, ma'am, it was two men that were observed smoking the marijuana. The marijuana? You haven't established the fact that there is any marijuana, deputy. Now, unless you've got a warrant of some kind, I want you off my property. May I have your name, ma'am? Karen Wobet. W-O-B-E-T. Is that all? Yes, ma'am. The deputy touched the brim of his hat. Have a nice day. Karen closed the door and returned to the kitchen. Athlon and Skip were on the back porch again. She joined them there. That was the police, she informed them as she stepped outside. Athlon and Skip were drinking lemonade. Karen continued, one of the neighbors saw you smoking. She scanned the top of the fence and the veiled windows of the surrounding houses. I bet it was old Shalter, Skip growled. I ought to throw a dead cat into his yard. Don't do anything so stupid, Karen snapped. Skip took a deep, calming breath, but stared at Athlon as if to say, you see what I have to put up with? You need to be more careful, that's all. It's my fault, Karen, Athlon stepped in. My presence has goaded Skip to bad behavior. No, I think your presence is a good thing, Karen countered. Maybe it will wake Skip up a bit, make him see that life is worth living. It isn't, Athlon later told Skip as he and Skip stood in the driveway making their goodbyes. Skip laughed at that. Their laughter sounded a little forced, though. Watch out for that neighbor, Athlon asked. The last thing you need is to be busted for possession in Alabama. Oh, I'll fix him, Skip promised, glancing toward the Shalters. You know, it's not too late. Skip felt foolish saying this, but felt he had to make some sort of positive contribution before he left. For what? Well, to play the drums, for example. Oh, Skip expostulated. He couldn't see himself wearing a Tommy Lee t-shirt after all this time. Or anything, Athlon added. Anything you want to do. Skip... yeah, Skip agreed with consummate poor acting. I mean it. But anyway. Athlon put his hand into his pants pocket and pulled out his keys. I'd better be going. Well, I'm glad you stopped by. I am too. Athlon glanced at his empty passenger seat as he started the engine. Zombies touring prediction fulfilled. They didn't do anything, Nero Shalter yelled. He had watched as the deputy drove away without any prisoners. He had watched as Athlon drove away, leaving the lawbreaker still ensconced next door. I can't believe it, Helene shook her head. This is why this country is going straight to hell, Nero thundered, shaking a finger at the wall. Helene took a breath. You still want me to take a shower, she asked. I never did, insisted Nero. What? I wanted spontaneous sex, not a premeditated hassle. We've been waiting here all this time to see the neighbors get arrested, and you want spontaneous sex." Helen got up from her chair. "Well, I'm taking a shower anyway." How filthy could she have been if she had been willing to sit here for half an hour, Nero asked himself. For a long time now, Nero's co-workers at the distress yard had made fun of him because of his devotion to the bands of his youth. It was a joke among them to say, "The zombies are touring again," as if this was wonderful news. Yet one day Nero came to work and announced that the zombies were indeed on tour, and he was going to see them. "Of course, it's only 2 of the original guys," he explained, "but how much longer are they going to be around? This may be my last chance." "Haven't you seen them before?" someone asked. Nero looked up at the ceiling. "I've seen them 5 times, he decided, going through his memory. "Didn't you see the Kinks 4 days in a row once?" someone else asked. "University of Pennsylvania, 1978. 4 days in a row, 6 shows altogether. They did 2 matinee shows as well that day." Later, Tucker took Bristol aside. "Why would anybody see the Kinks 4 days in a row?" he demanded, perplexed. "Why would anybody see any band 4 days in a row?" Bristol wondered whether Tucker would feel the same way if it was Leonard Skinner they were talking about. Nero did go to see the zombies when they came to town a little over a month later. He had purchased at considerable additional cost a VIP ticket, which entitled him to a private performance by the band before the show, as well as the chance to get one of his many pieces of zombies memorabilia autographed. He had fretted for weeks over this last opportunity, feverishly debating what to get signed and with what implement. Do you think I should get him," meaning Colin Bluntstone, the only zombie he really cared about, "to use a pen? Or a marker?" "'Cause my copy of Celestial Sands is the European copy, with the extra slick cover," he asked. He decided to go with the marker, but on a different LP, the more obscure "The Zombies Sing Songs of Love for You." At the show he had Colin Blunstone autograph the album, and then was allowed to talk with him for several minutes. "It would have been nice to see you guys with the original drummer," he told the singer. "Yeah," Blunstone replied with practiced sympathy, "but time moves on, just as we all must, eventually."